Hi, Twyla.
Hi, Norma.
So I think my opening with this conversation should begin with how we met.
Okay.
So I remember getting a call from Richard Avedon's office. You call him Dick, saying, I needed to meet with you to talk about some costumes.
Right.
And how did that come about?
I needed costumes. I said, who do I go to? Help. He said, go to her.
So that was really fantastic because that was the beginning of our friendship, relationship, and I got to know your incredible genius and see you in action and appreciate how dancers just enjoy and want to be a part of your world. So if you were to describe yourself to someone who is well-versed in dance, but you want to sort of explain you, what would you say?
I would say the same thing as what I would say if I wanted to explain you, which is you know how to fit, you know how to pin, you know how to take in a dart, you know how to actually get beyond the weeds and into the ground of things, which is why you know how to move forward. So I was a very good dancer. And so dancers could learn from me about ways of moving that they didn't know about. In the same way you can pin a skirt and make something nobody's never seen before because you know how to do it in the first place.
So when you started dancing, when did you start dancing?
I never didn't.
You never didn't? When did you start dancing with an audience?
Oh, well, I had twin brothers and a sister. And when the babysitter also came, I had a quartet. I never needed an audience. I just needed the dancers.
Right.
So there you go.
So, okay. So performing on stage as a professional, when did that begin?
It was never my favorite calling, performing on stage as a professional. And it did not happen until I graduated from college. Well, yes, as a professional, not until I graduated from college, when I danced with the Taylor Company for not quite 1 year and managed to get myself dismissed. And thereafter, my professional career as a dancer performer was over.
And so when did you start creating dances?
I never didn't like to sing.
Yeah.
It's always been, my mother was a musician. So when I heard sound, I went with the sound, and I wouldn't say I remembered it. So if you're asking me about anything that I actually felt deserved to be remembered the next day, that took some time.
So, you know, one of the things people ask me about, and it's a good question here, is when you're a leader, say you're playing, I have a feeling this has happened with you. So when I was a kid playing with a bunch of kids, there would need to be something to do, and I would make up games and somehow became the leader, just so everybody was occupied. So there was some point in your childhood where you knew you were the leader. And so at what point did you realize that?
I can remember when you're talking about this, an event, and I don't remember ages. We lived in a place, my parents moved from the Midwest to Southern California in 48, and that was wild country. We moved into the foothills, and there were canyons, coyotes. It was called Quail Canyon. There were lots of quails. There were real creatures around. And at one time, and it was with school friends, not my suspect triplet group, that I decided we would do a ritual. So I led the way into a canyon where nobody knew anybody and there were no houses. There's nobody around, right? And I designed a ritual, a ceremony, in essence, that involved a lot of throwing of dirt clods at one another. So maybe I was doing war, not ritual. I don't know. But anyway, that was the first of these sorts of experiences I recall. It's gone downhill since then. No, actually, it's, it's not dissimilar to what I do.
So, yeah, so that's what made me think that, there are people who find leadership. I'm using the word leadership. I never felt like a leader, but sort of like an idea or person that gets things to happen. And so I can just imagine you in this setting, experimental. So much of what you do is coming up with things people haven't seen before, not derivatives of what people have done. It's all original and obviously influences many, 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 many dances. But the original thoughts for each of your dances come from something. How does it evolve out of you? Like, how does this happen?
Each one comes from the previous one. We'll begin with where did the previous one start in a moment. Mm-hmm. That's zero. Zero is a very challenging concept.
Yes.
But we'll deal with each one going along. And each dance I made for a very long time, when I could afford to do it, I said, this is it. I'm done. You're over until you have something more to say. Go away.
Right.
And then I would come back when I thought I had some issue that had to be dealt with, because basically I had a responsibility to the previous work that had brought up this question. Mm-hmm. And you had to deal with it or it was dishonorable. Mm-hmm. So each work promoted a thought about, okay, well, that's good for that circumstance, but what would happen if? Mm-hmm. And so you go out to find out what would happen if. And that's it.
Yeah. It's a similar thing to what somebody asked me yesterday. What's your inspiration? And I said, it comes from the last thing I did. It's not seeing somebody else's work and thinking, oh, I want to do that. It's more of it evolves. And then you think, I need to do something. And it's interesting. And I'm not surprised that it's just this evolution that's your inspiration too. And so again, it's you being inspired. So how much is it the music first? Is it ever the music first? No.
Well, it depends on who's hiring me. If God's hiring me, it's not the music first. If it's a commercial producer, it could be. I find it, in a way, confusing to think of making dance to music, because music is complete. The composer, if they're good, said what they made to say, and what have you got to add?
Right.
They pretty much finished the job. And I did 5 years of work with no music at all. 5 years in which we performed with no music, because I know people respond to oral stimuli much more readily than to visual. So if you take the same phrase of movement and put it on happy music, everybody thinks it's a happy. Just take exact same thing, put it on sad. That's how it is. So I decided I should figure out what movement communicates. And the only way to do that was to take away the music. The other thing I did in those 5 years was to deal with dimensions and proportions. So we did some work in tiny, tiny little spaces. We only did pieces once, then they were over. We went on to the next thing, nothing like repertory. It was for a gala that was actually for some Vietnam cause, and integrated the idea of folks who were in jail cells because they were refusing to go. So we put the work in the size of the jail cell. We also did pieces that were all of Central Park. It was a huge Sheep's Meadow kind of piece with 60 people, and see what you can see way out there. Can you see anything way out there? And they were, in a way, they're scientific experiments. How do people perceive? How do people understand? I won't get to interpret yet. I need a few more decades to get to that. But just what do they see? What can you expect anybody to register? So, yeah, there was no music. There is, in this evening we're doing in March here, there are two pieces, one by Beethoven, the Diabelli Variations, which is an incredible tour de force, done at the end of his life, which is one theme, which he didn't even write, and which he incorporates whole cloth, which no one has ever done before or since, as the opening of the thing. It's a found object. And from there, he goes on to make 33 not really variations, but transformations of this thing. He respects it absolutely. And then he parses it and takes that piece and redirects it in space and time, actually. And he does it 33 times. So you're not seeing a variation of something else. You're seeing the thing itself made different 33 times. That's a concept that is greatly interesting and valuable, and has nothing to do with the sound of the music.
And so your relationship with those 33 is how you then develop the dances, or how does that come about?
Same thing. I had to create the thing he was given. I had to make the theme.
Right.
And I worked very hard to make something very, very simple. There are many legends about Beethoven and the Diabelli, but amongst them is that the theme is unbelievably constructed in a really simple way. And the legend is that Beethoven started it when he first received it. There was a request, would you do a variation? And he did 16 and put them in a drawer, because he didn't really think the theme was any good at all. It was like child's play for him. He dropped it for about 4 years. He came back to it with a different attitude. He came back to it with the attitude, holy shit, I could never have made anything that simple or useful. And so he came to it with a new understanding of the thing. So I had to try to construct a theme that would be so simple that if I were looking at it on stage and somebody else had done it, I'd go, you're kidding. Really? And then you'd have something to start from, to launch from.
You know, you talked a minute about doing the small box thing that had to do with the Vietnam confinement and in small quarters, and how dance and your interpretation of dance and a situation, maybe an issue that's affecting people in the world, politics, or in just what's happening at a time, is also. We had the conversation about Dylan the other night, where he did it through music, you do it through dance. And it was more of an expression of how people dealt with these issues for a period of time, and less than it is right now. Why do you think that is? How did that become a way you communicated? And more people did too, in a very unique, your style, his style. Genius works with such power and impact. And what was there was a motivation to do this?
Well, this is a very complicated question because it deals not only with content and work, but it also deals with generations in history and styles of the decade. I mean, I began working in the 60s, and in the 60s, there was a genuine care and connection to political, environmental thinkings that was intense. And it could actually be practiced because there were so many fewer people. You actually could go out and set a bomb in a post office. But the equivalent of that for some folks became making a certain kind of dance that would be disruptive or cause people to think in the same way almost that a bomb going off in a post office does. I suspect, Norma, that part of what happened is people began to see it didn't make any difference. And that the work that was being done perhaps had best be made to contain whatever of that thinking helps initiate it and motivate not just the single person, but the entire group working, and leave it alone. That proselytizing is going to be a distraction. I think also that it became clear that it just was not effective.
But I think there was a higher level of quality to it that might not have reached the masses in the same way.
You're breaking my heart.
No,
I think of myself as an entertainer.
No, but I think the reason, and the same with Dylan, there's this really intelligent interpretation of art that really takes focus, concentration. And we've entered a time where focus and concentration is harder to get. There's sound bites and social media and that fast energy of entertainment. How do you even deal with that now when you're doing your work?
Well, I remain in some ways old style in that there is, I think that, when you talk about Dylan, for example, he came with very advanced, far-fetched notions, but he also came with a deep respect for the balladeers of the folk movement and was genuine in that. That was a real commitment, and it launched him into this other place. But he's always had that as a grounding and something that told him why he did what he did, because he believed in it is why.
But also why you have longevity and he has longevity is because the quality of it, it's that quality that everything started with that continues, and the integrity of each of the work. I mean, they hold up. I love that you did a dance for him, and that was just so exciting. And Billy Joel.
You mean how I lured and seduced Bob Dylan into doing a project?
Okay, so tell us, how did you lure
I have a small studio in the apartment, and Dylan came to talk about doing a project. And I said, well, maybe, but you're going to have to agree that what I do is what you want to have done. So you sit there and I'll do a dance. So I did a little dance.
You did not.
I did. I'm telling you the story. I did a little dance. And then he came over and he said, you have to practice to do that. And I said, so do you. And so that sort of sealed the deal, I think.
Oh, that is hysterical. What a great story.
Yeah.
And what about Billy Joel? How did that come about?
Well, the Joel is a more complicated and a more kind of long-term commitment. I had a group of dancers. We'd been in Europe. They were a terrific group, but they were tired of touring. They'd been touring for 2.5 years. It's exhausting. They didn't want to tour. So I say to my son, who's also in my office, they don't want to tour. He said, okay, do a Broadway show. I said, great. Who shall we do this Broadway show with? And he said, McCartney or Billy Joel. I said, I don't know them. Oh, well, that's okay. We'll get their numbers. So we got their numbers, and I probably have told you this. I actually flew to London for a meeting with McCartney, who was a sweetheart and really quite wonderful and interested. But when I was flying back, I realized that it was a time of deep transition for him, many things happening. And he was actually trying to work it out in his art. And I said, he's British. Let's just leave it at that. I'm not British. So then it became about finding Billy's a connection to him. And also, like with Dylan, before I called Joel, I actually took 4 or 5 of the songs into a studio with the group and made movement on it to see, you can sell him maybe, but you better sell yourself first.
Wow.
You really want to do this. Don't call him until you know you want to do it.
So you ran it by them to see,
Who them?
Or you, or did you?
Who them?
The dancers.
No.
Did the dancers try and?
Yes. They're on payroll.
Yeah. No, but they.
I hope.
Sometimes they just experience because I've gotten to know a lot of these dancers through you and through other people, and all I know is the honor to work with you is just something they know is extraordinary. And they know it's not going to be a walk in the park, that you're going to expect the best of them. And and in order to really be the best, you have to really challenge yourself. And they do it with you. And it's so amazing to see how much they give you and how much
that's because I love them. I love them, and I want them to be, as you said, the very best they can be. But I want them to be involved for their own reasons, not just my reasons. Mm-hmm. It's not a job. I am only interested in intelligent participation.
Yeah. And then Sinatra is another Sinatra.
Oh, I have a good story. You want to hear the good story?
I mean, first of all, the work, the Sinatra stuff is like, oh my God, it's so much fun, and it's quality and beautiful, and just it's such a tribute to him and you.
Well,
putting
I appreciate
that together.
That. Yeah, and
so the Sinatra story.
Well, I'll tell you the Sinatra story, but first we'll drop a fashion name, Oscar de la Renta, who did the wardrobe for the Sinatra. Did a great job on the wardrobe. It tells you so much about the sort of elegance. Elegance of the era. We won't call it glamour. It didn't quite reach it, but it definitely had a sophisticated elegance.
Yeah.
He had the common sense to say, no, you don't want ball gowns. You want cocktail dresses. Mm-hmm. I said, oh, I do? Okay.
Right.
And they're heavenly because they exist somewhere between, 5:30 in the evening and 9 o'clock at night. And that's exactly right.
And it's the perfect style for dance too. Yes. I mean, it really so beautiful.
Yeah. And like you, he built the originals in his shop, which makes all the difference.
Oh, he did. Yeah. That's great. I mean,
great.
You can tell.
Yeah. No, the original set are gorgeous.
And they hold up. I mean,
they've been reconstructed.
No,
there
but
have been
the
thousands
hold up because they're so classic and timeless.
Yes. Yeah.
So the Sinatra story.
Oh, I thought I could dissuade you.
No.
Oh dear. Okay. So how did this? I just made it, and I don't know how. Excuse the language. The hell I thought we were going to get the music rights. I didn't think about rights in the olden days. I just did it, and somehow I don't remember how Sinatra got involved with it, but. He actually came to a number of shows and was one. We were in a Broadway house. It's the Eurus. It used to be called the Eurus, and it's where Witches is now, I think. And it had a very large freight elevator, and he actually had his car in the freight elevator. He came up. So he came up after intermission in his car in the freight elevator, got out, and we're all on stage to meet, Frank Sinatra. And he comes over, he's crying.
Oh no!
I said. Oh, Mr. Sinatra, why are you crying? He said, because I loved it so much and because I want to be a dancer. And I said, Frank, you are a dancer. You've danced beautifully in another number of projects. Just, don't give up your day job, Frank.
So I didn't realize he was so emotionally
moved
by it. That's really...
And unbelievably, again, generous. I mean, he made arrangements for us to have rights to those songs. He cleared it with all the musicians, all the composers, all the lyricists, all of the recording industry cleared the rights for this, and he gave it.
It's interesting. My mother was a big Sinatra fan, and I just didn't get it at all. Yeah. And then I think I did something to do with clothes, and I was given an invitation to come see it, and I didn't know anybody that wanted to come with me, so I went by myself, and I swore that he was just singing to me. And my mother used to say, he just sings to me and I got it, and I got what that was. And so when you see your piece, it's so sexy and so dynamic, and there's so much of his personality in that, and that's why I asked you about him, and obviously you picked up on that. Did you feel like he was singing to you, and you never?
No, I did the same thing. My mother also was a huge Sinatra fan, and I attached to him through her era, really, and thought of it as a throwback to an earlier time. which made it more possible to do something truly romantic because it had fantasy to it.
Yeah, it's true.
Yes.
I know. My mother was, I think, a day younger than he is. She was very connected. So I absolutely love that piece. And I want to talk about In the Upper Room.
Okay, you should. It's going, did I tell you, to Vienna this year?
That's so great.
Yes, the
It's
Vienna
so
Opera
great.
House, Mozart's house.
So explain that. First of all, let's talk about the In the Upper Room. So I just want to say we met in 80, what was it? What year did
It was
you
a
do
little
it?
earlier, wasn't it? I think it premiered in 84. Well, maybe. It could have been right on top. It could have been 84, yeah.
84. And so tell everybody about the concept behind In the Upper Room.
Well, that's a mouthful.
But it's an important mouthful because everybody that sees it today fall in love with it as if you just did it. So talk about timeless.
It's what I call an Ur piece, a classic. Urs are the ones that survive. They're the keepers. Everything else is transitional as a bridge piece, but you get to an Ur. And this one, actually, I kind of had done many, it's like a painter who's done thousands of sketches before they do that painting. I had done a number of studies that were involved with this magnum opus, if you will. And so when it came time to make it, I needed a foundation for it. I had lots of disparate things, but I didn't really have it anchored in why are you doing this? And I went back to a piece from 69 called The Fugue, which is the first piece I keep in the wrap. It's number one of the works, but it followed 5 years' work. I just didn't keep the first 5 years because it was learning lessons. I had nothing really to say. This one dealt with counterpoint. And I said, okay, we're no longer going to start this piece out of nowhere. Always when I began a new piece up until In the Upper Room, it was like find a clean start, go to a new place, and that way you won't be menaced by the past or judgment. If you go to a starting point, then there's before you, and you have got to connect into that in some kind of way. So that was a big step. And grounding it in the fugue, put it into a realm where there's real weight and gravity and this heaviness. But on the other hand, I also had a deep-seated need to, as they like to say, fly. And these lighter techniques, the ballet, as opposed to the tap dance. Tappers are very grounded. They make sound. Ballet flights. And I said, well, we'll put them again together like we did in Douce Coupe in 1974, but never mind, we'll reinvent it. Nobody will remember. 1974, it'll be new. Plus, you'll know how to do it because you've done it. Good idea. Okay. So that was basically the idea, was to have as much a reach in movement as I could, but to have it organized and disciplined so it could be identified. It wouldn't just be a big pile in the middle of the stage. So 2 cadres were found, the stompers and the other guys, the ballet folk and the stompers. And their sections were more or less juxtaposed, and I did commission a score from Phil Glass. And the reason it's called In the Upper Room is because he had in his contract approval over the title. So I'm somewhere in Arkansas. We're on the road, and I'm on cell phones didn't exist. I'm feeding quarters into the thing. We got to come up with the title. Phil, we got to have a title. No, I don't like that one. I don't like that one. We didn't like it. Somebody said, probably him. I'll give him credit. I'll let it be him. In the Upper Room. I said, okay, good. I know In the Upper Room. That's the Mahalia Jackson. And he said, yeah, it's great, isn't it? Actually, I do remember. We started out to make a requiem. We didn't get that far. But we did actually start to make a requiem, and it ended up being in the upper room, because if you don't know this gospel song in the Mahalia Jackson, I mean, it's just incredible. It just keeps climbing and climbing and climbing. And the power of it and the ambition of it was, I think, attractive to both of us. So that's
Which is what this piece does. It climbs and climbs. And,
it does build on itself.
Yeah,
that's what fugues allow you to do.
And so it's such a classic now, I think, because you took these two very different styles and put them together, and put them together brilliantly. And the dancers worked so well together. I mean, different styles, almost different body types too, right?
Well, yeah, but that again was my traveling company. I mean, they've been working together for over a decade. Some have been with me for 15 years.
Yeah.
There was a lot of history. Anything that's solid, as you well know, has got a lot buried underneath it. So it wasn't like we just hired a group of dancers and said we were going to do in the upper room. It was the piece that their bodies required next from the material that they had done up to that point.
Yeah.
And I was going to stretch them, and it stretches the repertory.
Yeah. And the sets, the lighting, the music, and I was so thrilled and honored to be a part of it. It was
black
so
and
much
white
fun.
was very clever on your part to say nothing of profound. Clever is a cheap word, perhaps, but I don't mean it that way. And the red is also really good. Why did you come up with the red?
Well, I mean, I think I remember the challenge was having these two entities that were very different. And so I looked at one as athletic and the other as ballet. And so the connection that I thought would be odd for ballet would be to use a bright athletic red, but a little ballet, and use the athletic red then with the black and white to kind of tie them together. And just the movements, just by having a stripe, the movements had the stripes doing every form and every pattern. So as every movement took place, a different pattern was coming about. So what was happening is, just by the nature of the movements, all of this other layer, and then the red socks and the ballet slippers just added that touch then to the second group, and it just felt right. And then really the lighting and the smoke, or what was that? Smoke.
Yeah.
The black and white and the red really could come out of that nicely. So and the music, and the build is just, I mean, people sit in their seats and you can see them lift as it gets higher and higher and higher. It's really interesting to watch. Do you ever watch people who are watching your dances?
I sit in the audience.
But do you watch the audience?
As little as possible. I look at them peripherally. I figure, I'll be all right. Don't hit me. I didn't mean it. It's okay.
I mean, it's got to be hard sitting in the audience because everybody's watching you, too.
Well, I don't watch them watching me, so that helps.
But I love watching you in the audience when we're sitting.
The pain I suffer, right?
I mean, your body
is like,
you're doing this and you're doing the whole dance in your seat.
I'm the conductor, only
really,
they don't need me. That's the thing.
No, but it's really, I mean, the whole energy is right there in the chair, and then watching people watch the dance, and especially in the upper room. I always see people, they start here and then they end up like this by the time it's over, and then they just stand at the end. So it's really, it's fantastic to watch, and then to see the different generations in this company who weren't here when we did these costumes, but are seeing it, are just blown away as if you just did it. I mean, that's really so extraordinary. What's your favorite? Do you have a favorite? I can't.
Oh,
I don't know
it's
if
like
that was even a
babies.
good.
It's like
Yeah,
babies.
I know.
It's the most recent baby is the favorite.
Yeah, that's what I say too. What's your favorite design? The last one I did, because
Yeah, right.
it's the last.
Yeah, no,
thought.
even the ones that are not hers or not keepers, you have to give them their time of day because they got you to the next one.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, it's true. It's like a chain. The which piece do you think was sort of a personal breakthrough for you that maybe wasn't something that has the notoriety of some other piece, but there's something in it. I'm saying this because there are things I've done that to me have so much meaning, but didn't really mean a lot to other people. But that brought me to such a different place. Which is there any of those that you can remember?
When you mentioned this, there's a piece that I fondly named Mud in about 1970. I don't know, 8 or 9. Mud. And it actually is the predecessor to In the Upper Room. There were 2 of the girls managed to put on pointe shoes. And some of them were in sneakers, and some of them were very pared down. In fact, it was ripped off Matisse from the Nightingale. And some were much more flamboyant and so on and so forth. And so these 2 forces were very clearly in operation. The audience hated it. Oh, hisses and boos. We can go there. Hisses and boos. Yes, in 1969, I think we did the 100s and maybe the fugue at the Delacorte. And the 100s is 111-second segments of movement connected by a 4-second pause done by 2 dancers in unison, no music. It takes about 18 minutes, and the audience is going, when does the show start? And we've been doing this for 16 and a half minutes, and fights break out. People are throwing beer cans. Babies are screaming. I go, right on. It's the way of the world. We can do this. And we did not lose our place. We got through all 100. So I don't know what to tell you. I mean, what is a response, you know? So the negativity of Mud meant that I parked that concept for a while. But when you push it under, it just percolates and it festers. It festers. And then it comes back, as In the Upper Room. But if it had not been Mud in the beginning, we might not have had In the Upper Room.
I totally agree. Those are the ones that are really important. There are things that I've done that I think even bad things were written about them. And I couldn't understand.
I know.
What are you talking about? Like, that's the best thing I've ever done.
Exactly.
Like, how is that possible? Which leads me to this thing that people are so afraid of failure. And they don't get it. So explain what failure means to you.
Okay. Well, I'll return to that part of the question. I'll deal with how it gets dealt with first before we go back to what it is. I have another of my apocryphal stories. It was either Milos or Jerry. I can't remember. It was either Foreman or Robbins who I forget what I'd done. And, you know, I got a lousy review in the Times. And they're going, you're lucky. And it's after your worst failures, you're going to do your best work. It's after your greatest hits that you're hung up.
Yeah.
And that's right.
Yeah. No, it's so true. And what about you? I mean, you've danced with incredible dancers, the stars of stars, and you've created works for them. Who are some of these dancers that really you think deserve the reputations they have?
Oh, I think all of them. I mean, and every dancer I work with, truly, certainly every dancer I make any new work on is afforded the same respect as, a huge name in the dance world, because they're contributing everything they have and a little more And that makes it a real burden and pleasure to deal with them in the work. I mean, when you're dealing with somebody who has the classic example of this is Baryshnikov. He came from Russia in whatever year that was, 78 or something, like 75, I don't remember. Anyway, he came here, huge reputation as a superstar of the dance world. And it's a problem. What are you going to do with a superstar of the dance world? I didn't know Alvin Ailey well, but I knew him. And Alvin had been asked, actually, to work with Misha before I was. And he turned it down.
Oh,
and
really?
We were in an elevator, and Alvin said, he's going to eat you alive. And I said, oh, okay,
my God.
Let's go. All right.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's interesting.
So I went in to work with Misha, and we started working by ourselves in a very small room, and I was working with Bach. It ended up going on Haydn. And I was a good jumper. He was a good jumper. He was a great jumper. And so I suggested, well, try this. And he'd look at, okay, and he'd do it. It wasn't so easy. And that was interesting to him. And so when I saw that he had a little trouble with that, I made it so it was even harder. And we had some frustrating moments. The best was when I had to go out into the hallway to the water cooler and dump the bottle over my head to go on with the rehearsal. He could be very obstinate, shall we say.
But
he tried some ridiculous things, and he basically triumphed. There are a few places. But he came here for adventure. He didn't come here to be who he was there.
Yeah.
So to be known as that, he wanted to break out of it.
Yeah.
So he was gung-ho to go. He'd try anything. And of course, he was formidable. And he could basically do anything one way or another. Mm-hmm. So then it was just a question of figuring out, okay, this is where he is. This is what I see as maybe, but we're right here, right now. What can it be that's closer to that and less that? Mm-hmm. Yeah. And he was willing to do it. A lot of folk who have a big reputation want to stay within their envelopes. They want to look like them. Mm. He thought he was big enough to look like everything, so he'd go for everything, and he was right.
Which is great. I mean, that's where you really see talent and memorable talent.
Yeah, and it's not just talent; it's the chops to hold up the talent and to push it out and to allow for, flair and so on and so forth. He'd paid his dues.
And as far as dance at that time, in the culture of the time, to dance today, what's the big difference? So this is the 70s and today. What's the biggest difference?
Oh, Lord. That is basically probably an impossible question because I was there. That question demands an objectivity, a pullback. I'm not sure that I can accomplish because so much of what I do comes out of the body. Right. And to, get rid of that and look at, okay, but what was it really and what is it now really? Uh-huh. And also because to speak of dance and my trajectory, they're not necessarily the same thing. I mean, for example, here's a way of dealing with it, perhaps. The Fugue was done when I had no resources. It was done in 1969. We managed somehow to get things up. Somebody contributed costumes. We had an amplified floor. We had no sound. We had no production. Went to in the upper room a decade and a half later, and we had options and choices to be made, but it was still the same question about time and space. Here it was clearer than here. Mm-hmm. Here it had a veil on it of production. The piece that's being premiered, along with Beethoven, which was actually done in the 90s, the new piece is also a glass score. And it has been a while that I have taken to go back to glass for obvious reasons. And so it's like a challenge. And have you got really something to say? All right, it was 25, 30, 55 years ago, whatever it was. Have you really got anything to say to
Mm-hmm.
it? And in fact, does he have anything
Yeah,
to say
yeah.
to it? He's less the problem than you are. Your name's on the marquee. His is down here. Yours is on the marquee. What have you got to say? So I took it upon myself to start the new piece where In the Upper Room stopped. In the Upper Room stopped, blacked out. I turned to face upstage and I began the new one with a hand, and the light comes from low over there, and all you see is the hand. And the hand starts to move like so, and then the dancer starts to lower and the lights start to come up. And so it begins in a very different way from where the other one stopped.
Yeah.
And it's a very different piece because
fantastic,
whereas In the Upper Room is this, black on white, red, this one is black and white, but they're black and white. It's a tangle, and you can't separate them. It's a whole different politics.
Wow. And so 60th anniversary.
Yes. How many have you got?
I think you're ahead of me by a few years.
Well,
not that
that's
many,
'cause I'm
though,
older.
unfortunately, by 3 years.
Am I 3 years ahead?
Yes, you are.
Okay.
But let's talk about what's happening. What are you doing for your big 6-0?
Right now, they're out on the road with this program. So they're in Northridge, California. They'll be doing 4 months of traveling, and they'll put it up at City Center. So the Diamond Jubilee Tour officially is the Beethoven with the glass. And that is the program. ABT also is talking about doing. We haven't signed contracts. Should I keep my mouth shut?
It's up to you.
Well, I'll share. Why should I keep my mouth shut after? It's too late. We're doing a piece from the 90s, a piece from the 80s, and we're talking about putting Push back up, which is the piece I made for Misha. So it'd be 70s, 80s, and 90s, pieces that were made for ballet theater. And that is in October. And then I'm also working on this show, which goes to workshop in the end of the year and hopefully continues on with the rest of its life the following year. And we have In the Upper Room in Vienna, and we have the Sinatra as you designed it as Come Fly Away from Me, Come Fly Away from Me, for the Broadway production, Come Fly Away, with the wardrobe that you did for the Danes, the Danish opera company, is also going maybe to Bucharest.
Oh, really?
If Romania remains on the face of the globe. And so forth. We will have those two productions hopefully happening. And there are other ballets going up with other companies. Discoup is actually going to Florida. So.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so they're doing the Beach Boys.
That's so exciting that these dance companies keep perpetuating the stories that you've been telling.
We're
through
good
dance.
for box office.
But it's really such a credit that all these years, each one of these dances has so much power, engine power, to draw crowds of people. I really, there's nothing like seeing dance in person, and just the power of dance is really extraordinary. I'm really a believer that dance and obviously music, but dance can never be AI opted in what you see and feel, because it's passion, it's spirit, it's the physical movement. Robots can do a lot, but to do what dance is. And so instead of dance sort of disappearing, dance is definitely, in my mind, going to be one of these things that we cherish more, because it is the human spirit with so much power. And
the robots will keep trying.
But I think they have other things to do.
They do no doubt have better things to do. Let me ask you this about dancing. When you're designing clothes, how much, when, and how do you think about the movement that will come from all the time?
All the time. All the time. I mean, it's how you feel in something and how people react to you, and movement, right? It's the way you move in something, the way you feel in it, you behave a certain way. But I really, I love that everything you're doing is living and breathing. And because AI can't replace it, it will continue to live and breathe, because that's what we have in dance. We have this spirit that's really extraordinary. And I think people love to dance, and now especially more and more people are into the physical, working out, being fit. And
Let's
dancers, well, they are more, I think more than ever.
Yeah, totally.
And dancers are athletes, and they're so fit that even appreciating dance through the fitness of the athletes that are performing, I mean, for an hour, or sometimes you even have more of this, they do one dance and then they do another, and you think, oh my God, how the hell are they doing it? I mean, and they lose a lot of water.
They do lose a lot of water, but isn't it ultimately everything that we do about the grandeur of the human spirit? And the only way you're going to know about that is to continue that it expands. Isn't that what we do?
Yeah, and to see how much more we can do. It's really great. If you had, I'm sure you do, when you have someone who says, I want to be a dancer, can you give me advice, Twyla, on if I should do it or not? What do you say?
Well, it's either think twice, or it's, if you can do anything else, do that. If there's nothing else you can do, then set out. It's not an easy field.
Yeah, and it's true. You need to have that kind of, it's passion. It's really the passion to do it.
Yeah, there can be no choice.
And it's really such a strong focus. I mean, having time for hobbies has got to be not possible.
Dance is the hobby. Dance is all things.
And then, do you think the natural progression is that dancers should become choreographers, or is there another way to become a choreographer?
Well, this is a difficult question. First of all, back to how dancers become dancers. It's that when I look at an audition, I see someone who is really inside their movement and is moving the way that is best for their body. I say, how old were you when you, my mother had a dancing studio. I was 3. I'm going, yeah, right. They always are. They always are. It always starts very, very young. In terms of becoming a choreographer, choreography, like anything it depends on how you wish to do it and what you wish to accomplish. It's like anything. If you want to have a commitment to an ongoing lifetime way of being, you start at the beginning, and that's what you do. I danced professionally for 1 year, then I was out of there. But I had been fed into a amount of information that was enormous to be able to siphon back into the dancing. If I had danced for a decade, also it's about child energy. If you don't start doing the thing that you do as a very young person, you don't get the child energy. And it'll always be started at a later point, and you'll always feel this is missing in that person's work. They started there. And also, you got to have a sort of a kid's lack of self-consciousness about the beginning. And just, the sheer energy of a young person, you need it to fight through to get to something. And if you've been successful, as a dancer and you want to become a choreographer, that's not such a good recipe.
Interesting. That's very interesting.
Yeah.
And then to be just now to kind of share with the audience your experience with physical fitness, and what would you recommend as sort of a simple plan for strength, endurance, for everything that a dancer would need for fitness? What would you share? Just, I know you've done every workout under the sun, and from power weight, and I don't know, I remember coming to see you, and you were working out, and you said, Kamali, get down and do some push-ups. And I was like, I have heels on, Twyla. and you were doing one-arm push-ups, and I don't know what else you were up to.
Yeah,
it was like, okay, this is like the freaking army. What is she doing?
Well, that's what it is.
But I know you have like some really good quality techniques. What would you recommend?
The problem is this: it's to whom are we recommending? Because even for myself, I've had to change radically courses of training in various decades. I had to shift out of the ballet when I was about 35, 38, something like that. And that is when I went into the more athletic, started boxing. And then from the boxing, which actually was dangerous, I had Teddy Atlas. You probably don't know who Teddy Atlas is. Teddy Atlas is actually quite known as an announcer, but he also was a boxer and then a trainer with Floyd Patterson, and they had a Cus D'Amato, and they had Tyson, and Teddy actually trained Tyson. Mm-hmm. And Teddy was called one day and said, there's this girl, she wants to start boxing. I don't train girls. Fuck no. And he said, yeah, you got to. So he did. And I was his first female trainee. And he didn't pull any punches, and we were running stairs backwards, and we're doing, Gleason's gym in the basement, which is rank. And here I am, and I'm doing and then pretty soon I'm doing and then I don't have the mask on, and I get a cut.
Oh, God.
And I go, I think we have got to cease this activity and find something else to do now. So that's when I went to the weight training, which I did for about 20 years, which is an enormous commitment. But it also, I do think, if you're strong enough to do it and you have a good trainer and you're prepared to make a long-term commitment to weight training, it is an excellent all-purpose regimen. I can't really, I've told you, both the hips and all the sockets are having their say. Let's just leave it like that.
They've done a lot of dancing.
Speak. And so I am now having to work around these joints in order to exercise. And it is frankly difficult to find a regimen that is both thrilling and practical. But I have not given up on it. It is a work in progress. I have told you, I've gone back to a gym, and I am doing weight training, but very minimal. I mean, I'm not doing heavy weights for training around the joints, which you can do. The main thing with training is to use it to discipline your mind, which is why boxing is excellent. Because if you get knocked out and go black into the black, that's not good. So you train to get knocked out, but not go out. All right?
I think on that note, Twyla, we can say we had a great conversation.
Oh, we had fun. I love you, darling.
Hey, press follow and leave a comment after you listen to the podcast. Thanks.